Welcome students. Today we will start with NCERT Economics, Part A, Chapter 11, Price Determination under Perfect Competition. So let's begin. Meaning of equilibrium price. Equilibrium price refers to a price where market demand is equal to market supply. In other words, there is no pressure on price to either increase or decrease and refers to position of no price change. It is also called market price. Next, determination of equilibrium price under perfect competition. Under perfect competition, no single firm or single consumer can influence the price because of the negligible share in total market supply or total market demand. Price is determined by the collective action of all firms market and the collective actions of all the consumers. In other words, it is the market which determines the price of the product through the market force of demand and supply. You see here in this table, demand and supply schedule of a good is given. So in this table, market price is determined at ₹3 per unit. Equilibrium price of a good is that price at which quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. At price of ₹3, quantity demanded equal to quantity supplied equal to 300 units, which is called equilibrium quantity. Thus, equilibrium quantity refers to the quantity demanded and quantity supplied at equilibrium price. Next, shift in demand and supply and equilibrium price. Shift in demand. Change in demand implies increase or decrease in demand due to factors other than price. In case of increase in demand, the demand curve shifts rightward, and in case of decrease in demand, the demand curve shifts leftward. A change in demand while supply remaining the same leads to change in equilibrium price and quantity. Increase in demand. Supply curve remaining the same if there is increase in demand. The demand curve and the equilibrium point shift to the right. As a result, equilibrium price and a quantity both will increase. You see here in this diagram, the original demand curve DD and the original supply curve SS intersect each other at point E. So E is the original equilibrium price, OP is the initial equilibrium price, and OQ is the original quantity. Now, due to increase in demand, the original demand curve DD shifts to the right D1 D1. The new demand curve D1 D1 intersect the given supply curve at point E1, where the new equilibrium price OP1 and the new equilibrium quantity OQ1 are determined. It is clear that OP1 is greater than OP and OQ1 is greater than OQ. This means that increase in demand leads to an increase in both equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. So next is decrease in demand. Supply curve remaining the same if there is decrease in demand. The demand curve and the equilibrium will shift to the left. As a result of it, equilibrium price and the quantity both will decrease. You see here in this diagram, E is the original equilibrium point where the initial demand curve DD intersects the given supply curve SS. At this point, the equilibrium price OP and the equilibrium quantity OQ. Suppose due to decrease in demand, the original demand curve DD shifts to the new demand curve D1 D1. So in this diagram, D1 D1 intersect the given supply curve SS at point E1, where the new equilibrium price OP1 and a new equilibrium quantity OQ1 are determined. Here, OP1 is smaller than OP and OQ1 is smaller than OQ. Next, shift in supply. A shift in the supply curve is also called a change in supply. A change in supply means increase or decrease in supply due to factors other than price. The effect of change in supply on market equilibrium while demand remaining the same. So, first is increase in supply. Demand curve remaining the same if there is an increase in supply. The supply curve and the equilibrium point shift downward to the right. As a result of it, equilibrium price will decrease but equilibrium quantity will increase. So you see here in this diagram, the original supply curve SS intersect the given demand curve DD at point E. Thus, OP and OQ are the initial equilibrium price and quantity respectively. When supply increases as represented by the new supply curve S1S1, equilibrium price falls to OP1 and the quantity increases to OQ1. Decrease in supply. Demand curve remaining the same if there is decrease in supply. The supply curve and equilibrium point will shift upward to the left. As a result of it, equilibrium price will increase and equilibrium quantity will decrease. You see here in this diagram, the original supply curve SS intersects the given demand curve DD at point E. Thus, OP is the original equilibrium price and OQ is the original equilibrium quantity. When supply decreases as represented by the new supply curve S1S1, the equilibrium price rises to OP1 and the equilibrium quantity falls to OQ1. Next, simultaneous change in demand and supply. The effects of simultaneous change in demand and supply on the equilibrium price and quantity. There can be a possible situation in this regard which are as follows. When both demand and supply are increased. When both demand and supply decrease. When both demand supply increase. Number A. When increase in demand and supply are equal. You see here in this diagram, DD and SS are the original demand and the supply curve respectively, whereas broken lines D1 and S1 represent the increase in demand and increase in supply respectively. The diagram clearly shows that change in demand and supply are equal. Hence, the old and new equilibrium price are the same, that is OP. Number B. When increase in supply is more than increase in demand. You see here in this diagram, as a result of shift in demand curve from DD to D1, supply curve shifts from SS to S1. Here, increase in supply is more than increase in demand. Consequently, equilibrium price falls from OP to OP1, but the equilibrium quantity increases from PE to P1E1. Number C. When increase in supply is less than increase in demand. This diagram shows the effect of simultaneous increase in demand and supply. When increase in supply is less than increase in demand, in such a case, equilibrium price and quantity both increase. So in this figure, OP is the original equilibrium price and PE and the equilibrium quantity. Demand curve D1 reflects the situation of increase in demand, while the supply curve S1 represents the increase in supply. This is clearly visible in the diagram that increase in supply is less as compared to increase in demand. As a consequence of it, new equilibrium price OP1, new equilibrium quantity also increases from PE to P1. Number 2. When both demand and supply decrease. So point number A is when decrease in demand and supply are equal. So you see here in this diagram, DD and SS are the original demand and the supply curve respectively, whereas broken line D1 and S1 represent the decrease in demand and supply respectively. The diagram clearly shows that change in demand and supply are equal. Hence, the old and the new equilibrium price are the same, that is OP. But the new equilibrium quantity decreases from PE to PE1. Number B. When decrease in demand is more than decrease in supply. When decrease in demand is more than decrease in supply, the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity both falls. So in this diagram, as a result of shift in demand curve from DD to D1, supply curve shifts from SS to S1. Here, decrease in demand is more than decrease in supply. As a result, equilibrium price falls from OP to OP1 and the equilibrium quantity falls from PE to P1E1. Point number C. When decrease in demand is less than decrease in supply. You see here in this diagram, new demand and supply curve as represented by D1 and S1 respectively intersect each other at point E1, determining the new equilibrium price of OP1, which is higher than the old equilibrium price, but equilibrium quantity decreases from PE to P1E1. That means when decrease in demand is less than decrease in supply, new equilibrium price will increase and equilibrium quantity will decrease. Next, wage rate determination under perfect competition. So under perfect competition, wage rate is determined by the intersection between demand and supply of labor. That is why this theory is also known as demand and supply theory of wages. So demand for labor can be clearly understood from the following factors. So number 1, demand for goods produced by workers. If goods which workers produce are demanded more, the demand for workers will also be more and vice versa. Point number 2, productivity of labor. The employer will go on demanding labor so long as marginal productivity of labor is greater than its price. Point number 3, price of other factors of production. If the price of other factors increases, labor will be substituted in place of other factors. Hence, its demand will increase. Reverse will happen if price of the other factor falls. Supply of labor. By supply of labor, we mean the number of workers ready to work at a prevailing wage rate. We here take supply of labor from industry viewpoint. Supply of labor in an industry can be increased by raising wages. On the contrary, fall in wages will lead to fall in supply for the industry. The supply curve of labor will thus have a positive slope. Next, concepts of productivity. Now, before indicating the process of determining equilibrium factor, price and employment, we shall define some of the important concepts related to this theory, and they are marginal physical product, value of marginal product, marginal revenue product, and value of average product. So point number 1 is marginal physical product, that is MPP. It indicates the change in total output with respect to a small change in factor employment. For example, suppose that 100 units can be produced per day by any firm with the help of 10 workers. Now, other thing remaining unchanged, if 110 units of that product can be produced by employing one additional unit of worker, then marginal physical product is 10 units. Point number 2, value of marginal product. It refers to the market value of marginal physical product. That is, if we multiply marginal physical product by its market price, we can determine value of marginal product. Value of marginal product equal to marginal physical product into P, where P equal to average price of the product. Point number 3, marginal revenue product. By the marginal revenue product of a factor, we mean the change in total revenue of the firm when the amount of other employment changed by 1 unit. It is equal to the marginal revenue multiplied by the marginal physical product of the factor. Point number 4, value of average product. When we divide the total product of a firm by the total number of factors employed, we get average product of a factor. Now, if we express this average product in a value terms, that is, if we multiply average product by its market price, we will get value of average product. Next, determination of wage rate. So, under perfect competition, wage rate is determined by the forces of demand and supply of labor. The firm will employ labor up to that level where wage becomes equal to marginal revenue product of the labor. Given the assumption of the law of diminishing marginal product, the fact that the firm always produces at W equal to VMP2 implies that the demand curve of labor is downward sloping. Again, They exist a direct relationship in between wage and the supply of labor, and beyond a certain point there exists an indirect relationship. By the equality between the demand and the supply of labor, the equilibrium wage rate is determined. So you see here in this diagram, the DL is the demand curve of the labor and SL is the supply curve of labor. Both the curves intersect at point E. So the E is the equilibrium point. At this equilibrium point, equilibrium wage rate is OW. Next, simple application of tools of demand and supply. Maximum price policy. It is known as maximum price or price ceiling when the government sets a maximum legal limit of a price of a particular goods or service. For this to have an effect on market, the price ceiling must be placed below the natural market price. This normally leads to a shortage. The quantity demanded will be greater than the quantity supplied. If a government decides that a market clearing price of a good or a service is too high and needs to be reduced, a price ceiling may be imposed. The reasons for such an intervention could be a monopoly which charges unreasonable high price, the good or service is an essential or merit goods. Next, price support policy. Sometimes the government fixes the price of several goods higher than their equilibrium price to protect the interests of certain categories of producer. For example, in India, the government fixes up the minimum support price for several agricultural products like wheat, paddy, sugarcane, etc. In case of excess supply, farmers of these commodities need not to be sold at price lower than the minimum price fixed by the government. The surplus quantity will be purchased by the government. If the government does not produce the excess supply, competition among its sellers would bring down the price of the level of equilibrium price. Next, the FAD theory. Professor Amartya Sen of India, Nobel laureate in economics, gave this theory. FAD here stands for food availability decline. According to this theory, poor people are deprived of food availability. Due to natural calamities, total production of food falls short of demand in a region. Consequently, price of food shoots up beyond the reach of poor people, which results in large-scale starvation in the region. So you see here in this figure, the panel A, B and C graph the demand curves of family A, B and C respectively. At PO price, all the three families can afford to buy rice. When price of rice rises to P1, family A cannot afford to buy any rice at all, but family B and C can. If the market price of P2 family A and B cannot buy rice but family C can, hence family A and B face starvation. So students, with these topics, chapter 11 ends. Thank you.